samurai. Everything including soda garuma, which is incense, is a samurai right guard. The sleeves, or sode, you can see are big and floppy and get in the way for doing things. So the sleeves are tied back. Oh, toss them. To get them out of the way. Okay? Miyamoto Musashi, on his way to Ganryu Island to fight Sasaki Kojiro, supposedly made taski out of paper. Folded it up and to tie his sleeves back. To get them out of the way so that you can use your sword properly. Okay? Now, a good blade, if it's wielded with force and you cut relatively straight, will cut these mats without too much trouble. Some of them very easily. The difficulty comes in, how you're cutting, multiple cuts. Can you make the target stay in one place when you're cutting? Can you draw and cut? Okay. Now, some of the pull on this blade, you can see it pulled the target a little. Those of you who are close, you can see the marks here on the blade. Okay? Part of the testing with this blade was cutting a piece of concrete, not something I recommend. Okay, but we're pushing the parameters of these blades to see what will they do, what will they stand up to. So here's a blade that literally cut, and partially split, of course, concrete, but yet is still viable to cut with. We have several offerings of this steel in the cast Hanwei line. The catalogs will show you which ones they are, and some of the blades are here at the show. This is a Bouguet offering called Old Pine because of the koshere. The koshere are fittings. This has an old pine motif. Okay. So you can see this blade doesn't drag the cut the same way. This is another high alloy steel blade. It's just in different mounts. So when you're cutting, there's all kinds of reasons for cutting. You saw the video that we have in there, that was sword testing. Okay? And that's a different thing than practicing for, say, kenjutsu or function. So we have different kata that we do that we'll sometimes practice our Tameshigiri with the kata. This is particularly an iaijutsu kata where I'm backing away from a person to gain distance, and then I pull the side off, drop the blade down so it's hard for him to see the blade. Okay? And as he cuts me, my blade comes up, kicks his blade, and you cut him back. Okay? And there's different kamae that you can cut from. Okay, kamae are positions. You'll see very frequently, you'll see this position being used. Okay, head strikes like head shots were one of the fastest ways to put somebody down. So samurai use them a lot as well. You'll also different types of cuts from this angle called kesagiri, and the reasons for that are many. One, you miss the head, you come down through the side, cut through the clavicle, subclavian artery, open the chest, heart, lungs. The other thing was, you might do that on the battlefield to avoid hitting the kabuto or helmet. Okay? And swords are swords. The people who made the swords made the armor. Bato Jutsu is drawing cutting from the saya. And like practicing accessing modern weapons quickly, it was done in case the samurai was surprised. Okay? And in a moment, you have to draw and cut. Okay? So he has to draw and cut very quickly. Bamboo takes a different cutting style, okay, because it's a different material. So, with the mat, using your body to cut with, you have what is sometimes called kiryo toshi, or cutting down, cutting to the ground. And the whole body comes down through the cut, okay? And as you're actually striking the person, you're impacting their body and their distance. The bones give you a little bit of resistance, the flesh gives you virtually none, okay? Now, hitting bamboo, you need more tip speed because it's harder to slice because it's a harder material. So with bamboo, you're going to need to handle that sword differently, okay? And this bamboo's been cut for a little while, so it's starting to get a little tougher. They made armor out of bamboo. Okay, they dry it, it gets really hard when it's dried, and then they lacquer it, and they layer it. So most Japanese armor, bamboo is a big portion of what made armor. Now how I'm wearing my sword is how they were basically worn, okay? So some modern styles wear one sword and they wear it here, okay? And that's one of the things that'll let you know that that's a modern derivation. It's not an old samurai style that has roots in samurai, okay? Because you have two weapons and you can't sit them on top of each other, okay? So the other thing that happens, of course, is if you leave the sai out, it's easy to catch on things or bump people. Saya ate, or striking saya together, someone striking a saya, for samurai, was an instant insult, and they were ready to fight in a moment's notice. It was a commoner, he'd probably cut down that fast, because they had an ability to what was called kill and depart. If a commoner insulted or contested with the samurai could literally cut him down and leave the scene. First cut good, second cut not so good. Not that it would have mattered much to the person. Not sure this is going to sit. The mats pull sometimes a little when you cut them. But you can see the density of this is much stronger than a human limb. And you can see how easily and quickly the sword cuts through it. Okay. Bigger, stronger, thicker piece of bamboo. Richard Dr. Bay. Now, another thing that changes a lot is the sword's not driven forward from the right side for us, okay? And this makes things very different. When I used to box, okay, Bo Wilson was one of my boxing teachers. Some of you people that are right in the prime of your life like me, remember Bobo was middleweight champ after Ray Robinson retired. Actually fought Ray Robinson 3 times. Never successful, but he wasn't alone in that, okay? So when we're moving here, the power doesn't drive off the front side. It's a completely different movement. The power comes from my left hip turning back. Okay? So my hand arm and my left side move together. That's what makes this. The closer into the center of mass I can generate the power, the less movement I have to have. If I have to really make big, well, this all looks great, except there's no deception there. It's like guys are coming at you in a fight like this, right? So what you want to be able to do is move your body, sword, as little as possible to make the cut. As little amount of preparation. So separating and swinging will cut fine if you can get somebody not to pay attention or stand there long enough for you to go through that motion. Okay? So that's why this study takes a little bit longer to do properly. People say, well, how do you get those to sit like that? Well, you get that by that first cut. It doesn't disturb the mat. It cuts all the way through there, and the mat's still sitting there in a moment trying to decide whether it's hurt or not. They're not real smart, unfortunately. They don't run either, which helps. Or fight back. So, the goal being that with practice, your cuts are so clean that the mats will tend to stay where they are if that's what you're intending to do. Can't really, this will come out of here if I cut this way on it, so there's enough resistance in it. As you get closer to the ground, it becomes more difficult as well, because it's harder to let the blade follow through. Now, that first cut on a whole lot of the blades that are being used out there right now would have bent the sword, okay? And you can see that this sword is not bent. That's one of the advantages. Blades made in the traditional Japanese manner have a very soft spine, pearlite, and a very hard edge. But if they flex past a very small point, they're going to tend to keep that flex. You can actually read some of the old books about battles where a sword was bent. The samurai got off his horse, stuck his sword against a castle wall, pushed it straight, got back on his horse, and went back into battle. Okay, so what we're trying to do is, how do we get a body that's ductile with an edge that's hard? Right? Those of you guys who are knife guys know that's the conundrum, right? We want a hard edge, but we also want the blade to be tough and flex and not give up, right? Not bend or break or chip. Okay, so some other things to take a look at. There's lots of different ways of drawing the blade rapidly. Okay? We do ours a particular way for tactical reasons. Right? We're trying to survive here in an edge weapon engagement. And in the process of that, every nanosecond counts. You have, the gap is as wide as the sword. That's how big the gap is. Right? 1/4 of an inch, no more. And the time you have is the speed it takes the sword to travel a couple of feet in space, which is faster than a human hand. Okay? So the drawing takes on its own peculiarities, how to do that. If I push the sword out, not only is it slower, but it puts my arm close to my enemy. My arm's not nearly as tough as these mats. If he touches that arm, it's gone. Now I practice left-handed, and they actually have ways of using the taski and the fan as a tourniquet. Okay? You pull the taski off, you wrap it. Remember, you guys always tourniquet on a single bone if you can. Tourniqueting double bones is difficult because arteries tend to run between bones. But literally, take this off, one tie, put the fan in, retie, turn the fan until it quits bleeding, retie. I'm not sure my opponent's going to give me enough time to do that, even though I can use the sword left-handed, not as well. So, some things that are different. Like a technique like this, if someone was approaching from this side, and they could be very close. Richard, try and do this so everybody can see right here. Richard could be very close, okay? Well, if I start stepping away or doing all this, well, he's going to close and stay with me. So some of you have seen that style used, especially with more modern stuff. What will happen here is I'll turn my body without the sword moving in space at all, okay? The sword won't even move in space. My body pulls it off. Now I've got a blade between the two of us. And I can just as easily cut with my body here, right, as I can by swinging it, especially on a human being up close. The deception is, if I move this hand first, the eye picks up that movement. But as I turn and my body moves away, the eye loses the sword being drawn. This is especially valuable at night in places where they had candles and campfires, right? They didn't have electric lighting everywhere. The same, stay there for a moment. The same would be true from the back. If he's here, and as I'm turning for the moment, I let the sword sit in space. So literally, if someone was holding my hand, my sword's not moving. And then as I turn, the hand drops behind and he's got a sword blade there. Remember what I showed you earlier, if he was coming down with his, I would just reach up, kick his blade past me and cut in the gap that's left. The blocking and smashing that you see on television, we all know Hollywood is all about fantasy. There's nothing in any of those shows that's real. It's all fantasy, okay? Smashing and banging swords together makes it really good for the soundstage guys and the audience. It's like those cars that have secondary and tertiary explosions. Where did they come from? Or big bar, those grenades that they can throw from here to that car, blows the car over and the guy's not even hurt. I want one of those. I don't know where you can get them because I haven't seen them. But thank you. Feel free to ask questions as we do this. Most of you have seen me cut before somewhere or another, so just watching me cut, I don't think is interesting maybe as asking a few questions. Okay?
Did you say save questions for later?
No, you can ask questions as we go along.
I was wondering if
ask them loud enough everybody can hear.
If the fittings on the sword are loose, will it affect how you cut?
Depends on which fittings are loose.
Okay.
If the blade's loose, yes. If the tsuba's loose, depending upon why, no. In fact, in Nagi Ryu, they leave the tsuba intentionally loose. It can move about a ½ inch. Their particular take is if the blade gets at an angle and the tsuba gives, it'll skip the blade away from you and leave a gap for you to cut in. Kind of like slipping a punch or parrying a punch. Okay? So, no. This doesn't make a difference. This is just tsuba. I constantly check. If you watch me, I'll be over here pushing my fingers to make sure. There's wooden pins holding this into the handle, into the nakago, which is the tang. Okay? This one has 2. They didn't use 2 all the time, but it's something they did do. The opening, this pin comes out this way. My hand covers it, rather than having it come out the other way where my hand doesn't cover it. Okay? This one goes in this way, but it doesn't matter because I'm not grasping there. Okay? So, if the blade's loose, we have problems. But just for your, I'm constantly checking.
James,
Yes?
on the cutting,
Loud enough everybody can hear.
on the cut, and you're talking about using your left hip,
Yes.
is that a snap like a punch, or is it a roll?
It depends on what you're cutting. Okay, the question was, on the cut using the left hip, is it a snap? And in a sense, yes, you're sending energy through your body. Okay? In fact, some of you asked the question, who asked the question about the touch on the head or the punch? Somebody did. Volunteer, thank you. Young, strong, no. We've met. Okay, I just want you to have some place. Can everybody see right here? Now, which is there, right in front of there, so you have a place to sit down. Your job is catch it. Okay? Okay, so first I'm going to show Richard, okay. Energy is, remember these systems were complete systems. That means that the sword was the basis of everything. Every bit of movement, every bit of strategy, everything you did was based on the sword. Okay? That means we strike exactly the same way we cut. When I boxed, we struck differently. I don't use that for this, right? I don't strike like that. So what I'm going to do with this gentleman, what's your name? Bobby, okay, is I'm going to transfer some energy. I'm not going to hit him hard, right, because this isn't about hurting somebody, but I'm going to let the energy go, and what you'll see in his body and what you see in mine will look very different, okay? Okay? So, what's happening here is, instead of pushing, you can feel you push back. Push back. Go ahead, push back. Now, don't so much. Put foot back. Okay, so, if I push, if I drive off of this way, okay, we have contesting. If I reach through, it just reaches through him. Okay? So it's a whole different movement. And the strike then is done like the sword. It doesn't have to move far. And where did this come from? Not good worry. I know I can't. Then I got an extra. Stay away from all guys with knives, right? Okay. So if I come through here and cut as hard as I can, where's that pressure go? It goes down to his feet. This sword will split the whole front of his chest open. And he's dead. Right? This shot grenade is a ball and they'll shoot back at you. Okay? You can cut through all this, and because the sword is so sharp, there's not a lot of shocking power. So, the sword cuts, if I twist, he feels the twist in his feet. If I cut the way I'm doing the mats, he doesn't feel that. He's displaced. Okay? He's displaced. I need to change distance here because if I'm within range, that means he's within range. Does that make sense? Okay? And this would be the same for empty hand. You gather him, okay? You gather him. You don't push him. I push him, he can push back. Okay? I gather him, he can't push back, even though he's trying in the moment. I can't take it much further than this. Okay? Feel the difference? Okay? It helps those of us who aren't young, strong, and good looking. That's him. Old and crusty, that's me, right? Thank you, I appreciate it. So, if you watch the left hip, I'll exaggerate this a little bit, okay? Okay? Left hip moving. Left hip moving. If I'm cutting from left to right, then it's right hip moving. Okay? Right hip moving. So whichever direction to cut, that's the position the hip is moving. Now that can get very small depending how much energy you use to cut. If you're cutting a person, they're not armored, they're just wearing cotton, silk, and skin, well, the cut doesn't have to have so much energy in it. Okay? This is more power than it would take to cut off a leg. So, same coming ground to sky, kiyage, okay? Coming here, the hip moves back. You're not leaning or pressing on the sword. If I lean and press on the sword, it doesn't want to cut properly, right? This is going to take more energy because this is starting to get you can build stuff with this now.
Question.
Yes.
How important is the curve to the cut?
Okay. That's a complicated question, actually, to clarify it. Curve. Okay. Most Japanese swords are curved, but not every one of them. Okay, but most of them are curved. Now the curve plays a role both in offense and defense, depending upon your style and the curve and where the curve is. Okay, it's tori-tori in the middle. This part is at saki-sori, deepest part in the top third of the blade, which is not real common. Or koshi-sori, where the deep curve is down here towards the tsuba, which was more common, called bizentori sometimes, because, or bizento, okay? So what happens with the curve, there's a constant motion being moved here with my body and the blade. There's hits, but hits are different, okay? So sometimes you just hit the person hard. But this movement, okay, coming inside. Now notice also when this movement takes place, my front hip doesn't twist like this. Okay? The movement takes place and the back hip moves and opens, but the front knee should move forward. Okay? The curve means that the blade doesn't meet its target all at once. Okay? It can not only open its way in, but it can also open its way out. If I cut somebody and get my sword stuck in him, and his buddy's unhappy with me in the moment, I'm not going to be able to turn and address that threat quickly. Okay?
What's the difference between hacking and skinning?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. See, this is a pretty thick piece of bamboo. Okay, that's pretty strong stuff. More questions? I'll keep cutting, no problem, but I just want to make sure that as we come out here, that I answer any questions you have about the swords, about classroom training.
How many? Which style of blade, Koshizori, do you prefer? Like which style do you prefer?
You know, I like a deeper tori to Koshizori. These blades aren't as deep as I like. They don't all come out the same. I like a more curved blade personally. And some of this comes down to your style, comes down to all kinds of things. I'm a foot taller than the average samurai and 100 pounds heavier. I'd have been a pituitary giant. I would have carried a longer blade than this, actually. They carried longer blades. The short modern blades that you see are primarily because of the Joseon laws that were passed by the third Tokugawa shogun Ieyasu. 27.4 inches. Okay? You control the army of the people, you control the people. Different from the samurai. Remember when Toyotomi Hideyoshi unified Japan, he had all these armies. So what did he do? Send them to Korea. Korea's going to cause problems at home. So that was the whole Korean campaign. Get those guys out of Japan, give them something else to do. You see here, sooner or later, we're going to have more wars.
Is there a situation where you draw your weak hand or offhand?
Yes, there is. And generally speaking, that situation would be with my shorter sword. Okay? Also draw with my offhand in seiza, or the kneeling position sometimes. Okay? Sword was placed in different positions for a reason. If it was a clan situation, my sword would go on my right, edge in. Okay? Because this is a non-threatening, hard to get to. If I was someplace I wasn't too sure about the guys, but I wasn't trying to be too provocative, the sword could go on the left side, but edge in. It doesn't really make much difference, because when you teach yourself to draw from here, it's just as easy to come out of here like this, okay, as it is edge out. But where the edge is says a lot in a society where everything was defined by warrior courtesy and where the blade was, okay? Edge out like this, of course, put me in a completely different position. But if I was here, we have rolls and stuff from here. Sometimes you'd evade first, but you also come down and you'd slap the side normally, but I'm not